Hello, everyone, and a very, very warm welcome. Thank you for joining us to this ICTforAg 2022 pre-conference discussion, which is sponsored by Feed the Future and the GIZ through the German Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, the BMZ, and implemented by DAI and IntelliCap. So that was quite a mouthful. Thank you very much for joining us today. My name is Elke Zimnik-Mate, and I will be moderating today's discussion and very much look forward to spending the next hour with all of you. I'm a digitalization advisor in the GIZ Fund for the Promotion of Innovation in Agriculture, and since we like acronyms so much, it's I4Ag in short. So as I said, we're delighted to have you here today, joining us for the next 60 minutes, wherever you are in the world. For some of you, it's breakfast, for others, it's maybe lunch, for others, it's dinner or cocktail time. So since we want to spend a very comfortable hour with you in your living rooms, in your home offices, in your kitchens, we also invite you to grab a coffee or a drink or a tea and make yourselves comfortable for joining us in this discussion today. And hopefully it will feel as if you are joining us live on this round table today. This is really aimed at emphasizing the upcoming ICTforAg conference, where we will give you a bit of an insight into the conference, why we have such a conference, and what you can expect from it. And the aim for such a pre-conference discussion is really because we aim to design an interactive virtual conference, and we need all of your voices, all of your inputs to really make it a valuable event, where it's about technical dialogue and fostering collaboration on digital agriculture, which is also the theme for today, ICTforAg. Please note that this webinar is being recorded, as you might have already seen. And if you are not comfortable with being recorded, please note that you can also join or watch this recording at a later stage. Some housekeeping rules. Please make sure to keep your microphones muted. And if you have any questions, please do so in the chat box option, which is right below. As you will see here on the screen with our beautiful blue-black backgrounds, I'm not alone here today, and I'm joined by very esteemed speakers from across the world as well. First up is Josh Woodard, who's the Senior Digital Advisor in the Bureau for Resilience and Food Security at USAID. And since he's also a very esteemed speaker, but he also has a lot of interests and passions, and you might be interested to know, since we are a kind of living room discussion today, that he loves cultivating an urban food forest around his house and has unique and rare food varieties and vegetables. So maybe if ever you're interested, Josh is the man to speak to, and maybe we can even learn something from him in the future on whether he uses digital technologies on his urban garden or not. Up next, we have Brenda Bender, who's the Global Senior Technical Specialist on ICT4D at IFAD. And what makes her particularly passionate and the right person to have here today is her interest in getting young people into agriculture, and that she really wants to emphasize that it is possible to have fun and make a good living from working in agriculture. And also, very interestingly, it turns out Brenda is a fantastic singer. So maybe if you join us for the ICTforAg conference later in March, we will have the opportunity to hear Brenda. So no pressure, Brenda, on that. And last but not least, we are delighted to have Santosh Singh here with us today, who is the Director for Agriculture, Clean Energy and Climate Change at IntelliCap. And similar to Josh's urban food forest around his house, Santosh loves speaking about forests as well, as he started his career in forestry in Gabon and Congo. And additionally, and I think this is very fitting for today as well, he is apparently a huge tech enthusiast. So I'm sure that his passions and his work make for really, really great insights. So thanks all of you for joining us here today, Brenda, Santosh, and Josh, and we really look forward to hearing from you. And for all those listening in, you don't have to worry. It's not going to be a 60-minute full frontal presentation with powerful points today. It's rather going to be an interactive dialogue between the speakers here, but also you, and we will have a chance to invite you to post your comments, questions, and insights as well in the chat. So we really look forward to having this as a virtual dialogue already in the run-up to the conference later in March. So what brings us here together is really the role that technology plays in agriculture in these days to sustain, create, and innovate a sustainable agricultural sector worldwide. And as you know, I don't think I need to tell all of you here, ICT4Ag has really provided a lot of opportunities in the sector, but we are still faced with many challenges. Poor infrastructure, affordability, and the often increasing gender divide. So what we really hear today, and then what we want to discuss during the conference, is to look at creating awareness to reduce some of these challenges and constraints, to harness the opportunities that this brings, and to really foster dialogue and thinking around these opportunities and challenges. So speaking of the 2022 ICT4Ag conference, we just quickly want to say what it will be all about to kind of set the scene for us today. So what we want to foster at the upcoming conference is the understanding on the impact of technologies for smallholder farmers, how technologies, how they can create impact through technologies, how smallholder farmers react to these technologies, and how they also adopt it. And how can we address stumbling blocks for smallholder farmers when it comes to the introduction and use of these new technologies. At the same time, we also want to understand how governments, donors, investors, and the plethora of stakeholders involved can really collaborate in this sector, and how we can find solutions that de-risk the opportunity costs and that can really integrate smallholder farmers into these decision-making processes. So, as you know, there are no perfect answers or perfect solutions, but we can all think of it collectively. And that's why we are joined here with Brenda, Josh, and Santosh today. And our aim is really to work towards goals and solutions together. So I think I have said enough, and now we really look forward to hearing more from our distinguished speakers. So first of all, I'd like to turn to you, Josh. You've been involved in the agricultural sector and especially working on digitalization for a very long time now. On the basis of your experience, knowledge, lessons learned, what are some of the technological gaps for on-the-ground needs of smallholder farmers that hinder the adoption of digital technologies at low and middle income countries? So I'd love to hear from you on that.
Yeah, thanks, Elke, for that introduction, for that question. I mean, for any of us who are working in this space, we know that the answer to that question varies a lot. It depends on the context. It depends, there's a lot of differences between countries and within countries. I think, one of the things that, from the USAID perspective, that we certainly emphasize through USAID's digital strategy, as an example, is really understanding digital ecosystems that we're working in as a precursor to effective use of digital in development contexts, whether that be in agriculture or otherwise. And that also happens to be one of the 9 principles of digital development, so sort of understanding the context that you're working in. I think it's also really important. I mean, a lot of times when we're thinking about the ecosystem, it's easier to maybe get a sense of, or broad brushstroke on aggregate, what some of the data, but really, we need to, if we really want to understand what are those hindrances, it comes down to the actual users that we are intending to benefit. And so that's where I think another one of the digital principles, like design with the user, really fits in well. That if you can really have conversations with farmers, see how they're using technology, observe, see some of the challenges, get a sense of what types of devices they have. And that's a lot more useful than just on paper seeing that X% of farmers have a basic phone, X% have a smartphone, right? Because we know that different devices have, even within the same class of device, have different capabilities and functionalities. So I think that, those are really important when we're thinking about designing inclusively in the context of digital and smallholders. And that's because, we know that not all segments of the population are going to have equal access to digital tools. They're not all going to have equal access to mobile networks. Their ability to afford mobile connectivity or mobile data is going to vary. And we know, for example, that on average, women are 14% less likely to own mobile phones than men, and they're 20% less likely to own a smartphone, and 43% less likely to engage online. I mean, these are global sort of aggregate statistics, and so of course it varies. In some countries it's better, in some countries it's worse, and in some communities it's going to be different as well. My point of that is just to say that I think it's really important for us to consider differentiated programming when we're thinking about how we're engaging with communities, with farmers, with other ag sector, ag value chain stakeholders, recognizing that not everyone is going to have the same level of access, the same ability, the same ability to afford. And so we may need to think about offline functionality, sort of analog components, low-tech components, as well as creative approaches to expanding mobile phone access and ownership. So on the last point, and then I'll wrap up because I know that we want to keep this conversation flowing. But there's a USAID recently funded a paper that, and I'll put the link to the chat in a moment, that was looking at some of these issues in terms of what are some different approaches that are being used to help expand access to mobile phones and ownership of mobile phones. There's a lot of different models that are out there, and so I'll post that in the chat.
Thanks, Josh.
To give you some ideas.
Fantastic, thanks, Josh. And I think we can all look forward to a good nighttime reading or morning reading with a USAID study. And Brenda, picking up on some of the points Josh spoke about, especially the principles for digital development, inclusion, the importance of making sure that you look at equal access. What are IFAD's current or past initiatives that are addressing these issues with regards to digitalization and that are aligned with the overall objective of the ICTforAg conference?
Thank you so much, Ik, for that question. And as you said, IFAD is also through its ICT4D strategy. We're driving towards scale-up uptake and adoption of digital technologies to ensure that these solutions are actually consistently fit for purpose. At the same time, they're fit for use, and they're contributing towards agricultural transformation. We have several use cases where we have addressed some of the issues that Josh has raised, but effective adoption of digital technology is still a challenge for smallholder farmers. For this reason, IFAD has particularly been focused on the last mile, looking at ensuring that there is participation of those who do not have access to these digital technologies. And we're leveraging the integrated of both use new front-end technologies such as blockchain, geoimagery. At the same time, we're also looking at proven solutions like SMS, interactive voice, and radio. During the peak of COVID, the pandemic, when extension services were disrupted, IFAD, through the Rural Poor Stimulus Facility Initiative, has invested in interventions whose main components have been to promote the use of digital services to deliver key information for production, weather, finance, and markets for smallholder farmers. We have worked and collaborated with Precision Farm Development, now it's called PXC, to use such kind of low-tech technologies to deliver these advisory services to farmers across Nigeria, Pakistan, and Kenya. And this has reached about 1.7 million farmers during the pandemic up until now. We also have another use case where we have an Cafe project funded by IFAD, but it has been implemented by the National Association of Coffee Producers in Guatemala. They actually were enabling adoption of climate smart coffee production by using online platforms to get extension services, at the same time also using drones and data loggers to obtain information on weather, and supporting about 125,000 farmers to actually get information on climate change, plague, and droughts. So we can see that, as Josh mentioned, there is a particular element, which is the digital ecosystem. It's a precursor of effective transformation for agriculture sector. We need to continue to work with each other and other stakeholders and partners to promote adoption of these technologies to support smallholder farmers. We can see that IFAD, alongside other organizations, are participating in this upcoming ICT4Ag conference, and we're geared towards finding solutions to bridge this food security gap and build resilient communities, especially for low and middle income countries. So we look forward to seeing how this conference spans out. Over to you, Ek.
Incredible, Brenda. Thanks for highlighting that, and so many fantastic initiatives. If by any chance you already have some links to some of these, which everybody can follow up on, it would be great if you could put that in the chat. And speaking of the chat, I'm seeing that there are already some questions incoming. So as I said, this is really interactive format to keep them going. And I'm personally very excited to see so many people and so many introductions from across the world. I've seen from Vietnam, Benin, Nigeria, Malawi, Mozambique, UK. I can't even mention it all. So keep asking questions, and great that you could all join us. So Santosh, Brenda just also introduced some of IFAD's great initiatives. IntelliCap also is associated with a lot of various stakeholders and implementing programs in multiple countries, and also has a great track record. When smallholder farmers have access to technology, do you see it impacting productivity and income levels? So what really are the impacts there? And how does it help to promote women and youth inclusion in agriculture? So we'd love a few guiding words on that from you. Thanks, Santosh.
So I think, IntelliCap has been working with a number of these enterprises, and we have ran so many programs. And without any doubt, I can say that it is changing the way the smallholder farmers doing agriculture. So there's no question about that. If they get all the services, it surely is impacting them. The question is that whether they're able to get it. That's the question. So if I look at the work IntelliCap has been doing, we have seen that we digitized, dairy value chain, and we saw the income of the farmers going up. They had access to finance just because they had the track record of their transactions. It enabled finance. We have seen farmers benefiting immensely from a digital grain bank. They deposit their grains and they get access to records which they can use to get finance. So there are a number of examples, but if I have to take a learning from that, there are three ways these ICTs, solutions help farmers. A, they reduce the risk and help them make better decisions by advisory. So farmers, we have seen that they are making far more better decisions because they got the input, they got the data, they got the advisory solutions working for them. Second, their productivity and income goes up primarily because they have access to market, they have access to logistics solutions, they can go to the market, negotiate better because they have all these tools. And third, finance has been a big problem for agriculture, smallholder farmers. They don't have a track record, credibility, when they have these digital solutions providing them the transaction details and they have a proven track record of their past production, they're able to get finance better. And there are a number of solutions. We have M-Krishi, Crop in, DigiFarm in Kenya. We have seen the fishery sector having solutions. So I will not go into solution, but the team can put those examples and you can go through that. But two major, kind of dimension that ICT for Agriculture has brought in is the inclusiveness and being aspirational about agriculture. So ICT for Agriculture has made, this agriculture more inclusive and more aspirational. Women traditionally have been limited, role in agriculture to play because of several societal norms, challenges they face in operations. When they get access to negotiate the market price just at a click of a button, they get to know where they can sell, where they can get the input. It's far more liberating and very phenomenal impact on the way they do agriculture, the way they participate. At the same time, youth has been asking questions whether agriculture is just for sustenance. Is it a career option? Should I go even there? If it is just about surviving, is it not worth it? But when you see the income going up, when you see a number of solutions transforming the way you do agriculture, you don't need to now do a physical labor. You have the mechanization solutions, you have all those solutions. So it is becoming more aspirational for the youth also. So I would say the biggest contribution that ICT for Agriculture has done for this space is primarily making it more inclusive and aspirational for youth. Now, the only question that we are having is that how rapidly we can scale up ICT solutions in all the global south. And I think the event, I'm looking very forward to interact with partners and see how we can take those solutions and work with them to scale them. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Santosh. And you were also talking a lot about scaling. And here I have a question to you, Brenda. So of course, if we look at scaling and creating an enabling environment, we also need to look at the important element of capacity development, especially in supporting people to adapt and to change. So based on your experiences and the experiences from IFAD, what are some good practices and examples for designing training models, promoting digital skills and literacy, especially again for women and youth?
Thank you. Thank you for that great question. I want to agree with Santos that women are the most deprived when it comes to access to digital technologies. But there is another interesting fact, which is in the current GSMA report, that if you look at the current trends, 40% of the population in low and medium income countries will still be offline by 2025. So despite a large number of people being aware of mobile internet, digital literacy still is the biggest barrier in terms of adoption of digital technology, especially for women and youth. On the other hand, we are also seeing an increased advancement of digital technologies from mobile to now satellite data to Internet of Things to artificial intelligence, which is also, on the other hand, affecting and increasing the digital divide. So there is an urgent need to build capacity of these users of these technologies to ensure that they can adopt and effectively use them. Some of the good practices, I think Josh mentioned about this when he was doing his opening remarks, was that most of these solutions would have to be built with the users in mind. And that's always challenging because we tend to build solutions based on our understanding of the market or what's in, without understanding what is the need of the user, what is their pain points, and are we addressing the context that they're actually going to be using these technologies in. That's very critical. These technologies would have to enable equitable, inclusive, and also contribute to our sustainable development. We have learned also on the other side that clear targeting mechanisms and ensuring that women and youth are part of these initiatives are present. It's not just about being counted when you write our reports that we had this X number of women, X number of youth, but it's about them actively participating and benefiting from these solutions. We need to ensure that we can attribute digital technologies to these demographics. On the other hand, we also need to pay attention to the cultural, societal, economic barriers that prevent women from accessing these services. There's a recent study of the UN Secretary General on a panel of digital cooperation, and they're actually urging the business sector, society, civil society, national governments, multilaterals, and even the UN themselves to develop particular attention to policies that actually encourage digital inclusion, especially for equality of women and young people, because these are traditionally excluded groups, and we need to strengthen research and advocacy for action for all these marginalized people. At the same time, we need to ensure that this is a must do, not something we can decide not to do or not to do it, because women actively are usually marginalized. Research and evidence-driven policies would actually build practical knowledge. We have examples in IFAD where we do have a youth agribusiness hubs working around relevant countries in Africa that are actually working with other partners such as Kilimo Trust, ITA, and IOM to build capacity for young people to ensure that they can leverage digital technologies and also build their literacy and knowledge. At the same time, platforms such as this ICTforAg conference are such an opportunity where we can bring this multi-stakeholder approach to devise good practices and models, and understanding that we need to ensure that all these actors are working towards digital transformation from an equality and inclusive angle. In other words, we must constantly be cognizant that digital divide is real, and we need to devise mechanisms to narrow it down. Over to you, Eric.
Yeah. At one point, I had goosebumps, Brenda, because you highlighted so many important points. And I think all of you, Santosh, Brenda, and Josh, you showed what great opportunities there are and what we should really keep on doing at the same time that we have a lot of examples already that really are great out there. But at the same time that we still have a very, very long journey ahead of us where we really need to pull our resources and expertise. And that's really where the ICTforAg conference in March wants to dock onto and build onto, where we can deepen these discussions based on what all of you had said. Also, Brenda, your last points on we need to get evidence-based policies out there. How do we do it? How do we go beyond just training numbers, but looking at the content and how we do it? So we still have a journey ahead of us. And Josh, so if we go back to this conference, ICT4Ag 2022, keep on always mixing up the years, we're already in 2022, is the 6th edition of this global annual convening. What makes this conference so unique that it's already taking place for the 6th time? And how has it evolved over the years?
Yeah, thanks, Elka. So I think, what makes it unique is that ICTforAg is really the only now global conference that's focused exclusively on digital technology and agriculture, with a primary emphasis on low and middle income countries and smallholder farmers. There are other conferences that are focused in sort of the ag tech space globally, but none, really at that intersection of LMICs and smallholders. And I think, what makes this one in particular, this year's, a bit unique, and this talks to how it's evolved over the years, is that historically ICTforAg conference was hosted in Washington, D.C. It was a smaller, more intimate gathering, maybe 100, 200 people. And COVID really changed that. So with the last ICTforAg conference, which was 2020, only because it happened in November of 2020, and that's why there was no 2021 ICTforAg. That one was the first one that was entirely virtual, was global, and that enabled us to reach a little over 1,500 people at the last one. And so we were able to bring in many more diverse perspectives than previous editions that were based in the US. For this one, it's the same, and really hoping to exceed that 1,500 number. If we could get to 2,000 participants, I think that would be fantastic. The other thing is that the most recent two ICTforAg conferences, 2019 and 2020, were funded solely by USAID through Feed the Future. And this year we're really pleased to welcome GIZ and BMZ as a co-funder, as well as to have an advisory committee that has individuals from 10 other multilateral donors and UN agencies. They're really helping us to shape the conference to make sure that it is inclusive, that it's broadly representative of the needs of the community of stakeholders, and so we really hope that that helps us to really deliver strong value to both the development sector and also the social impact sector. And so I think that what moving forward, what we'd really love to see is that this continues to expand. So, from 2020 to 2022, we've really expanded the involvement of other stakeholders in ushering forward the conference. And we're really hoping to continue that moving forward, so that if we look into future iterations, 2023 and beyond, that really it is a community-driven event, and really is bringing in even more diverse perspectives into the conversation.
Yeah. Thanks, Josh, for giving us a bit of an overview of where it's been and where it's going. And in terms of the conference this year, what you can look forward to are 4 overarching themes. So first one being locally led development, digital inclusion, climate, and digital and data sovereignty. So 4 really, really key aspects. And I think they really build on what Brenda, Santosh, and Josh already mentioned a little bit, and what I can see in your interactions in the chat, that those are really topics that you are also interested in deepening conversations on. So these topics will be interwoven through the entire conference, where sessions will focus on these. We will have time to really explore these interlinkages on data, technologies, and digital innovations, and how they can remake the agri-food sector around the world. It will also focus on how we can work with the private sector and all other sectors, because we really need an ecosystems approach if we want to really create the change we want to accelerate impact. So Josh, you just mentioned a little bit about the conference. I've just highlighted some of the conversation or the main topics around it. But what can the participants expect? So all of you here from all over the world, thanks for introducing yourselves here. What can they and all of us expect during the conference? What conversations will be had during the conference? And how can these really facilitate deep learning and engagement among all the stakeholders so that we can really move beyond just talking and listening to see how we can actually jointly create impact and a digital use of technologies in the agricultural sector?
Yeah, so I think, at this point, we all have been on so many virtual meetings, virtual conferences that, we're cognizant that I think there is some burnout that happens from these sorts of virtual engagements. And I think, how we're trying to address that is to really mix it up with ICTforAg, to have a different type of mix of sessions. So we'll have deeper dives, technical discussions into topics related to the conference themes. We'll have some highlights of digital ag solutions, thinking about networking opportunities and what does that look like as well. So really facilitating that. And also hopefully we're going to have some fun, lighter content as well. So, it's not going to just be come and sit and listen to people talk about things, but it'll really be a chance to engage. And we're, hoping to do that really by bringing a lot of diversity in terms of the format, speakers and the content. But ultimately, I think the conference's success is really going to depend on how engaged everyone is. So participants as well, obviously, as a key element of that. And, we really hope that participants are able to learn new things and make new connections, and that it's really that the conference is more than just a passive one-way experience. I mean, this reference, may not make sense to everyone, but there used to be, in fact, I think there still is a park in the US called SeaWorld where they have whales that, would swim and they would jump. And so like the first 10 rows, they would have signs saying, you will get wet if you're in these rows. And that's really, I think, the same thing here. We want to make sure that people are really getting involved in the conversation, both leading up to the conference, so for things like this session, during the conference, and also after. The conference isn't just going to stop with March 10th. We're hoping to continue the conversation and engagement going beyond that. So, and I think that this is important because with any conference, right, there's limits to how many people you can actually have presenting, but the reality is we know that there's a real depth of knowledge and experience in the community. And so even everybody who attends has something to share, some perspective. And so whether you're attending for just one session or you're going to be there for the whole conference, we really want to encourage people to come be engaged. We understand sometimes, you may need to just passively listen in, but, to the best that you can ask those tough questions, really help to drive the thinking of the sector forward, I think would be fantastic. And we really see ICTforAg as a great opportunity for us sort of collectively as a community to come up with some creative solutions to the challenges that we face with responsibly and inclusively leveraging digital technology in the ag sector in low and middle income countries. So I'll just say, in closing, I think if you look at the 4 conference themes this year, they're very much aligned with USAID's priorities and also my personal interest. So I'm very excited about them. I think if you look at the USAID administrator recently announced her policy priorities, and those include a focus on inclusive development and local solutions, which are 2 of the themes in the conference. Also, USAID recently released a draft climate strategy. And so obviously climate as a theme is very important to us. And then, data and digital sovereignty is also one that, personally I find very interesting and fascinating, especially as we think about or the new economy, the digital, fully sort of digital economy that is going to continue to expand and grow over the coming decades, and what are the implications of governance and ownership on this thing. So anyway, there's a lot in there. There's a lot to be excited about, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Absolutely, Josh. And I think personally, we're also very closely aligned to those topics: local development, data sovereignty, which I know we've exchanged on already. So there's a lot that awaits you. And also, as Josh, you said, if you're the first rows of such a water show, you get wet. We hope that we already whet your appetite for the conference. And that it really is about, if you want to get the most out of it, it really is about actively becoming engaged. And that's why please don't forget to continuously put in the chat also your expectations, your wishes, what you would like to see, how you would like to become involved. This is really your chance to co-create with us. So Brenda, we've already mentioned a lot now about the conference and what awaits them, but what are the different categories of institutions that are expected to attend this conference? Because it's also about who is attending this that makes it really interesting and relevant to all of us. And what's the value proposition for these institutions to join this conference? And what role can they play in facilitating collaboration? So I'd love to hear that from you.
Thanks, Ik. If it was the Golden Globes, we'll say we'd have brought the red carpet of who is who in ICT4Ag. But we want to look at this conference as a platform for multi-stakeholder engagement. It's an area where we could strengthen the digital ecosystem across different actors that are working in the AgTech space. And we are expecting a diverse participation of institutions from private sector, public institutions, academia, government, farmers themselves, as well as agriculture experts. We expect that each of these institutions participating in the conference will leverage this platform to build partnerships, to network, and find opportunities for future collaboration. At the same time, it is anticipated that each of the participants will come out with knowledge, with new information, as well as an individual experience. And that's always important when you do get to these conferences. You come up with something that resonates with the work you do, resonates back and fires up your passion to work more for smallholder farmers and to support different communities. For the private sector and other entrepreneurs in the AgTech space, this is a great platform where they can gain insights and understand the issues that we have been raising about grassroots, the challenges that smallholder farmers face. Working at those grassroots and then developing solutions that actually address these key issues, and also connect and on opportunities to deliver those products and services to fully address some of the issues we have raised. As I mentioned earlier, research, evidence-based solution is key in our work. So to know what is working, why has it worked, and also how we can prioritize some of these things is crucial. Therefore, to bring these diverse groups of academia and researchers on this conference, it will be a great opportunity for them to collaborate and develop innovative solutions in the coming future. On the other hand, our policy discussions and overall awareness about the impact that policies in the AgTech space also work, it will be prioritized, and it's expected that we have government on this conference that will look at various stakeholders and matters that are especially related to policy, to governance, and also regulatory issues. So we want to see that happening and having this kind of conversations. And lastly, this conference is a whole platform to share best practices where we can apply to multiple regions. We work globally in different institutions, some work in different countries. We want to see how synergies can be built across different entities, how different countries, and how people can come together to work on these challenges, especially the ones that are affecting smallholder farmers. We do have like a niche and an interest to support smallholder farmers. So on behalf of the advisory committee, we are looking forward to the participants on this call, as well as others who have not been able to attend this call to attend the conference and sharing the word to attend. And we hope and we know, we can promise it's going to be an exciting collaboration platform. Over to you, Ik.
Thanks, Brenda. And I think you should definitely maybe consider a career in communication and PR, because with your enthusiasm, if I wouldn't have already signed up, I would have been first in line now. Brenda, you also mentioned showcasing and learning from best practices. So Santosh, I would like to know from you, part of the institutions who are considering to join or who've already signed up are emerging agtech startups, local NGOs, farmers associations already have great ideas, products, solutions. And I know also from the chat, there are many of you who actually probably want to showcase your solutions, and you've put it in the chat. So how can these entities, these organizations participate, and how can they showcase their innovations and make it and show the kind of global ecosystem what they've done?
Okay. I think Josh and Brenda have given the good amount of summary of what we are trying to do there. So a lot of proactive discussions, lots of focus on partnership, collaborations. But I think I'll just summarize a few things that we are trying to do. And one of the key things that is that we are looking to have a lot of engaging sessions with the farmers so that they are at the center, they are talking about their challenges, they're sharing their stories, which would be a very, very unique way to learn about the people that these AgTech and the institutions are working for. So there are a group of activities being done primarily to increase social engagement discussions where we have the storytellings, we have farmers sharing their journey. There's a movie time for farmers, so you can know about that. So a lot of focus on knowing the farmers, understanding their kind of activity. Technology showcase is, an activity that we see is a huge potential to replicate many of the solutions through partners through different geographies. So there is a electronic platform that we have where you can showcase your solutions. You can talk about the kind of problem you're solving. You can attract partners who can take your solutions or learn from your solution and take it to different geography, different segments. So there's a whole lot of provision for showcasing what you have done, not only AgTech, but also the best practices, the kind of problem solving approaches you have. So we have a social segment where you a lot of interactions and engaging activities. You have a technology showcase where you can showcase your solutions, share your best practices, and connect with that. The third is that I think the fourth theme that Brenda talked about and Joe's highlighted, knowledge sharing. Now, there's a lot of scope for knowledge sharing, whether through technology showcase or through the social activities. But we want to kind of make this event as a platform where all kind of relevant knowledge about ICT4Ag is shared. So you can tell your stories, share a white paper, share videos, share your anecdotes, and we will try to kind of showcase to the larger audience. I think my team will put email addresses in the chat box, contact at ICTforAg.com. You can just drop a mail there and we can see how we can showcase your content there. But most importantly, I think it is an opportunity for everyone to find the right partner in whatever they are doing to, kind of see if they can together scale the solutions. I would also highlight that there's a place for every participant to contribute to give opinion about how we can make this whole event better and what discussions could focus on. So we are also trying to get a lot of information from the participant about how we can do things better, how we can curate this whole discussion better. So feel free to come and participate and talk about that, whatever you have to say on the platform. I think I'll stop here, but the idea, the bottom line is that we want everyone from a participant to a speaker to an entrepreneur showcasing the technology to be part of the discussion. It is not a one-way passive engagement that Josh was talking about. Everybody is proactively participating in that.
Thanks, Santosh. And I think you highlighted very well how everybody can become engaged in the conference and how you can also use it as a platform to showcase what you are doing. But you also mentioned the keyword participation, and now we've heard from Brenda, Santosh, and Josh quite a bit. And now is also a chance for us to look at all your questions. There's really been quite a lively discussion going on in the chat already over the last 45 minutes. So I'm just going to pick up some of your questions now. I know some have already been responded to, but I think this is really interesting to see, what you're all interested in, what questions you have. So I'm going to start, some questions are very specific on different applications and solutions. Some look at more systemic aspects. So I'm going to just pick up on the first question from Anthony Makumi. And thanks for asking this, Anthony. He asks, we've been in the space for a while now. So what do we see as the technologies used by most users? especially looking at the farmer and how are they really impacted with what they do. So maybe, I don't know who wants to start, maybe Josh, and then Brenda and Santosh, if you have anything to add, feel free.
Great, thanks, Elka. And actually, I put in the chat something that may be of interest to Anthony and others. So there was a study that, or an evidence review that was recently commissioned by USAID and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation that looked at, tried to map sort of evidence of impact of digital in agriculture across a whole different number of use cases and technology types. So that if everyone scrolls up maybe 5 chats up, you'll see the link to that there. Is called Agriculture in the Digital Age. I think if we, broadly speaking, technologies that rely on lower end mobile telephony have more potential for reach at the moment in most countries, right? So voice, SMS, USSD. Radio is still, we often forget about radio as we talk about digital thinking, about, sort of the new stuff, but radio is still a main source in a lot of countries. And there have been some interesting stuff that's been done with making radio a bit more interactive. Farm Radio International has done some stuff there and some others. And, I think, increasingly as smartphone penetration is increasing, as access to mobile data is increasing and is becoming more affordable, we're seeing more interesting things being done there as well. Although, of course, I would just caution to say that as we get excited about the potential of smartphones, let's not forget that it's going to be a while before every farmer in the world has a smartphone and has access to, affordable mobile internet. So we still need to think about other technologies as well.
Yeah, thanks, Josh. And maybe I'm just going to pick up from that, and then Brenda and Santosh, you can just add to that. There was a question from Riyad Hassan Bacha, and I know it's already been partly answered in the chat, but I think it fits in nicely with what Josh just said, that we shouldn't forget that it's not just about the high-tech solutions, but also low-tech like radio. And Riyad wanted to know, so how does the integration of ICT in sectors like agriculture work, where the infrastructure like internet and other access issues are still unavailable? So Brenda and Santosh, maybe if you could just say something on that as well, how important it is that we focus on those aspects as well.
Yeah, the dependency on infrastructure, I think it's going to be there for quite some time. And as Josh has mentioned, that as much as we are advancing in different technologies, this we can never run away from, right? We still need to have access to internet. We still need to have access to devices to ensure that smallholder farmers, especially those that are left behind, can actually access some of these solutions. At the same time, we also, as startups do come in, as new solutions are being developed, is the understanding that when you're developing these solutions, in what context are they going to be used in? So you can have this advanced AI application that require data, pulling it left, right, and center, and the smallholder farmer has no way of accessing such kind of solutions. So we need to have, this kind of innovations that bring both old and new technology together. And that's where the breakthrough is going to happen, to enable a satellite imagery data that can be transformed into an advisory for smallholder farmer who look at that and understand what he needs to do on his farm. That's the deal breakers, right? That is also the change is going to happen. So I think that's where we need to come together as technologists, as agronomists, as entrepreneurs, and come together and see how we can address some of these challenges. But like you said, as Josh said, technology, those barriers of infrastructure, if we don't address them, and there's still a long way, and they'll still remain relevant and act as barriers for any kind of advancements. Over to you, Santosh, for your views.
Just, I think I will add one point, that there's a lot of misconception that when we talk about ICT for agriculture, we are talking about those fancy technologies like AI, machine learning, and satellite-based imagery. It's not. I have seen many solutions where as simple as having a call center where somebody can call and get information is immensely benefiting. And that's where we have to think of ICT for agriculture in the context. Being from India, where the data cost is probably the lowest in the world, and we have the almost universal coverage of internet connectivity, not in terms of people having access to a mobile set, but data is available. I know the places where even the phone network does not work in many parts of Africa. So how to kind of get this? So I think the focus is that use of television network, use of radios, use of traditional phone network can be a game changer. So we should not confine the ICT4Ag discussion only to those fancy new age tools, which many of the global South is still deprived of. So India has done that in past in a number of places. We had a national number where you can call and get farm advices. And we used to run a national extension system where we used to run a television program aimed at farmers. So old systems still can do a lot of work for farmers.
Yeah. And picking up on that, Daria Schultz asked a question. So thanks, Daria, for that. And Daria asked if there are systematic ambitions to streamline emerging evidence on what works into the redesign of ICT tools. So really looking at, what can we learn when we redesign ICT tools, maybe picking up on a lot that you've said. And then I'm also just going to integrate the question from Toon Driesen, who then also asked what the role of government is. So I think these can be combined, because I think government plays an important role when it comes to these systemic changes and how we redesign ICT tools. I know it's a very complex topic, and I'm sure each of you and all of us on this call could spend a lot of time on this. And if there was a straightforward answer, I don't think we would be here today. But maybe, Josh, if you could briefly say something, and then Brenda and Santosh, if you have anything to add, feel free to chip in. But maybe Josh, do you have a response to that?
Yeah, so I think, the short answer that I will say is that there's a lot that has been happening in this space. It's not new. When I was talking about interactive radio, it reminded me of some years ago, I wrote a toolkit on interactive radio, and I was just looking it up, and it's coming up on its 10-year anniversary. So this is like, a lot of this has we've been doing a lot of these things for a while, and I think the evidence base has been catching up with the practice. And so now I think the great question is, well, how do we then make sure that we're applying the evidence to how we're thinking about use of digital and ICT moving forward? Perhaps it's a bit of a cop-out answer, but my answer is, I think ICTforAg as a conference is one of the ways that we really want to facilitate that exchange. So, to make sure that people have opportunities to share evidence, to share experiences, to learn from each other, hopefully forge new partnerships, so that we can, as a community, as a sector, start to think differently about how we are going about deploying and supporting technology in the ag sector, in ways that are really evidence-based, and also that are viable, and not just something that is, donor dependent. Donor funding ends and then it falls apart.
Brenda and Santosh, you both seem to be in full agreement of what Josh said. Is there anything you would like to add? Otherwise, I would move on to some of our next questions.
Yeah, maybe just to add the government angle.
Yeah.
Because, for example, organizations like IFAD, where we work extensively with government, our business model is supporting governments, building their capacity and enabling them to work in this space. We have seen a lot of interest. I think a lot of interest where governments are now looking at best ways that they can integrate digital technologies in their strategies, in their frameworks, looking at even enabling infrastructure, the enabling environment to ensure that these solutions do strive. So I can say that government plays a crucial role, because even though us as multilaterals or private sector, if we don't have the government buy-in, most of these solutions will not be sustainable, because government provides us sustaining infrastructure and structures that these systems can be able to operate. So we need to be very cognizant of that and continuously invest in terms of building their capacity and supporting them to actually mature these components. So For example, in the AU space, there's this digital strategies that are being developed for AgTech space, and most governments are coming in to develop their own strategies for integrating technology in the agriculture sector. So they do play a crucial role, and we're always very cognizant of that fact.
Yeah, important point. Thanks, Brenda. So we have a couple of questions also that look specifically at various technologies. And I would actually say, if it's okay to those asking the questions, whether you can park those and we can address them in the conference, because they're very technology specific, which makes them extremely interesting, but which might bear the most fruit if they are embedded in one of the sessions, or if you join one of the tech showcases during the conference. And these are really great questions. I do want to highlight them, but maybe I'd say, if it's okay, let's park them for another month and a half. And all of you, this is a crowdsourced intelligence platform right here. So if you have any answers, please feel free to put your own experiences in the chat, not just those from Brenda, Santosh, and Josh. One of them is from Michael Anthony. Hi, Michael. What are the best applications of blockchain technologies that the panelists can refer to? And here I would say not just the panelists, but all of you. Maybe there are some of you who have a lot of experience with blockchain. If you could put that in, and maybe Santosh, Brenda, or Josh, you also have some ideas which you could add as a link in the chat, that would be fantastic. But hopefully during the conference, we can really see whether in the showcase there are any blockchain technology discussions or showcases, which hopefully can stimulate some in-depth discussions there. Then there's also one again from Anthony Makumbi to look at the link between savings group and farming practices. And then there's a similar one from Charles Tarr that looks at how can we integrate digital tools into national extension systems. So maybe those, digital agriculture advisory apps, all of those, I think, and I know from some of the sessions will actually address this. So that would be, maybe this is a teaser to whet your appetite even further, that those can really be addressed at a technical level during the conference itself. And as I said, I'm going to repeat myself, if all of you crowdsourced have any recommendations for I would say the colleagues in this call, the participants, please put them in there. And trying to see what else we have in the last minute. Then of course Natasha Grist asked a really important question just now to say, well, before we start investing a lot in ICT4Ag, how can we make better investment decisions which will have the biggest impact for poor farmers where limited funding is available? And I think maybe there I can conclusively say that that's, I think, something Brenda, Santosh, and Josh spoke about a little bit, to see, especially with regards to that digital literacy aspect, how we can address that. But I think, Natasha, an extremely important question. I think it's one of the fundamental ones, because there's so much investing happening in ICT4Ag right now. What makes most sense? What do we actually need to look at when it comes to capacity development? And it fits nicely also with some of the themes, looking at local development, etc. at the conference. So hopefully we can address your question at the conference as well. And with that, going into the last 3 minutes, I would like to thank, first of all, our three speakers and discussants, Brenda, Santosh, and Josh. Thank you so much for joining us today. Brenda, thank you for also representing the advisory committee here today. It was really great having you here, and Santosh from the IntelliCap side, and of course Josh from USAID. I hope all of you joining today got some answers, maybe even more questions. I personally feel some of these things always leave me with more questions, but that's great, because we want to continue stimulating these discussions. We want to promote deeper thinking about this, because only then can we jointly try to find answers and move towards our joint goal for really creating sustainable impact through ICT4Ag. We really warmly invite you to join the workshop, the ICT4Ag 2022 conference, where in the chat now you will get the link to the conference site. Again, if you haven't done so, please register. You will also find the email address there, contact@ictforag.com. So if you have any other ideas, any recommendations, please get in touch with the conference organizing team, who can then respond to you. And of course, there are also social media links, for example, the LinkedIn page, where you can keep up to date with all the newest developments. So thank you very much for joining. We can't wait to spend 2 days with you. And don't worry, those 2 days will be across all time zones. So you don't have to wake up at the middle of the night or go to bed in the middle of the night again, because it will make sure to take account all time zones. And yeah, we look forward to spending 2 days with you from the 9th to the 10th of March. Even if it's virtually, I'm sure it's going to be a lot of fun and very insightful. So see you all soon and have a great rest of day, whatever time zone you're in. Thank you very, very much. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks, Elke, and thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Bye.